something like that. So we have 5, 6, 7 people. That's good. Raise your hand if you would like to get some practice in drafting policy recommendations. Okay, so more or less everybody raised their hands, meaning that all of you are in the right place, because you will get some experience drafting policy recommendations on artificial intelligence. I will tell you a bit more about this in just a minute. And for those who already have some experience, you can gain further experience on a relevant topic. And of course, you can also maybe provide some guidance and give some good tips to those who have a bit less of an experience drafting policy recommendations. So this session, as you will see, it's a very interactive session, hands-on activities included in the session as well, on artificial intelligence and digital rights in Southeast Asia. I will be providing an overview of the challenges and also the opportunities of using artificial intelligence for governance. And more specifically, I will focus on the role of civil society in doing so, because you might be aware that civil society is not that actively engaged in driving the conversations on artificial intelligence. And I think that this is something that we have to correct. So I hope that I can give you some interesting inputs here, as long as the slides decide to work, which they do, yes. Right, so very quickly, my name is Marc. You have seen me speaking in some other panels already. I'm the research manager at the Asia Center, a policy think tank in Southeast Asia. So I hope that this session can be a mix of two things. The first one, I will try to give an overview of the challenges and opportunities of AI, as I just mentioned, but I can also tell you a little bit more about the Asia Center, so you understand what we do, and you understand how civil society can become a more active actor and stakeholder in shaping artificial intelligence narratives and dialogues. So the Asia Center has offices in Bangkok. We have the AI Hub, newly established. I will tell you about it just a bit later. We also have the Research Hub in Malaysia, in Johor Bahru. We have the Media Hub, and in Phnom Penh, in Cambodia, the Training Hub. We do 4 things at the Asia Center. The first one is evidence-based research. We have a team of researchers with a background on social sciences, mostly, across offices. And one of the topics that I research a lot over the last 12, 18 months is artificial intelligence. Then what we do is we leverage all the that we get from the base research, design and implement capacity building activities. Then, once again, we leverage all this knowledge to design communications plans, so we can reach out to a much broader audience, maybe with infographics, short videos for social media, engaging with traditional media outlets. And finally, we also do advocacy at a national and international level, primarily using UN human rights mechanisms. We work on 4 areas: freedom of religion or belief, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association, and the right to political and public participation. And now we are starting to include a new variable, which is artificial intelligence, to all of these different areas. And even if you think, oh, how can you bring together artificial intelligence and freedom of religion or belief? Trust me that they are tightly interlinked, and this is the beauty of artificial intelligence, that can be applied to almost any aspect of our daily lives, and also when it comes to human rights is particularly important. So what I will be explaining in this brief, short presentation, because as I said, I want you to do some work to use your brain power, if you have any brain power left at this point. I will show you that civil society is largely excluded from many discussions on artificial intelligence. So this is one problem that we have identified. And then I will brief you on some action points, some actions that civil society can do to start addressing this problem, which is being more active in the design of regulatory frameworks, trying to give a human rights perspective to the use of artificial intelligence. And then the third is capacity building and training. And then very briefly, I will also talk about the use of artificial intelligence in elections. This is very timely because, as you know, there has been so many rounds of elections in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia over the last couple of years. So this is the key observation that we have made after, researching artificial intelligence and the intersection of technology with society over the last 5 years. 5-10 years ago, when social media started to be a big thing in Southeast Asia and all over the world, it was mostly civil society who were shaping the narrative. You were taking the lead. And then governments, even tech companies, were forced to catch up. What is civil society doing? Oh, I'm going to do the same. I am also going to use this digital platform to spread the activities that we do from different ministries, for instance. So civil society was taking the lead. But now this is different with artificial intelligence. Who is shaping, who is leading all these conversations? Governments, tech companies, and the private sector to some extent. And civil society is largely excluded. This creates a huge problem because this means that the voices of many, many people, many social groups, many organizations cannot be really heard. And this becomes a problem because it creates a huge gap of the needs of civil society and the needs of other relevant actors. So this is what I will show you. With this, it doesn't mean that these conversations do not exist at all. There are some initiatives that try to promote the views of civil society. But when it comes to human rights, when it comes to politics, everything becomes a bit sensitive and they try not to touch upon these sensitive topics. They focus on inclusivity, for example, which is still very important, but it's less sensitive from a human rights perspective. So these are some examples. There are many organizations that focus on how can we bridge the gap between the public sector and the private sector. How can we promote inclusivity, citizen participation in governance, gender equality. As I said, this is extremely important, but when it comes to really sensitive topics, political topics, human rights topics, then the conversation is still not quite there yet. So this is the big question. At the end of the day, when citizen participation is generally weak in many, many countries, can artificial intelligence do something about it? Can it strengthen participation, or it's very, very challenging? This is a question that we have to keep in mind. So what can the civil society sector do to strengthen citizen participation and engagement in governance? The first point of action is to be more active or to provide an oversight of AI regulation and use. In many other panels, the idea of consultations has been in the conversations every single day. Civil society must take part in all these conversations with governments, with technology companies, and with every single other actor and stakeholder. This is the first point. But it's not only to shape the regulatory frameworks, then is to keep governments, to keep tech companies accountable, to provide, this feedback that is always necessary to identify potential gaps, potential weaknesses that then can be addressed with a revision of these regulatory frameworks. The second point of action is to try or to advocate for a human-centric and human rights approach to the use of artificial intelligence. AI for business, AI for economic development is extremely important, and this is one of the focal points in which governments and tech companies are focusing. But civil society has an extremely important role in conveying the message, hey, artificial intelligence is good for economic development, but this doesn't mean that we don't have to pay attention to the rights of the people from different backgrounds with different needs. So civil society has an extremely important role in advocating for this approach. And then the third point is capacity building. Civil society needs to push the relevant actors, like international INGOs, to provide more capacity building, more training, because it's not just about making AI available. It's teaching, training people how to use it responsibly, something that again has been mentioned over and over again in the last day and a half in this ICT camp. And finally, I wanted to mention elections because it's an important topic. AI can strengthen electoral cycles. At the same time, we also have to pay attention because there are certain actors who are also using artificial intelligence to weaken electoral cycles. So how can civil society play a more active role? We can focus on developing electoral fraud detection tools. AI can be of great help in trying to detect, for example, deepfakes or anything that undermines the quality of elections. This is a second point. AI is also important to enhance accessibility for voters with disabilities. This is something that goes often, it doesn't really appear in many reports, but it's an important point. And artificial intelligence can also be used to develop chatbots or virtual assistants that can provide crucial information that people, for example, with limited digital literacy skills need to have about elections. So, in a nutshell, to recap, the key idea is that civil society is still largely excluded from many of the conversations that are shaping the use of AI in governance. And of course, this needs a multi-stakeholder approach. It needs the help, the collaboration from all these actors to make sure that civil society is included in this process. What can we do? So this is all a bit abstract. This is in theory, but what about in practice? What happens after this workshop? Are we going to become more active just because you are sitting here and you are nodding your heads all the time and saying, yes, Mark, whatever you say, fine. We need to take action. Let me give you two examples, stuff that we do at the Asia Center. Just 2 weeks ago, we established the AI Hub for Civil Society Organizations based in Bangkok. This arm of the Asia Center will do three things. The first one is evidence-based research, particularly on the regulatory frameworks on artificial intelligence and the responsible and ethical use of AI. The second thing, it will assist in the digital transformation for civil society organizations, so capacity building. On the one hand, by providing general knowledge on digital transformations, on artificial intelligence, but also in providing more assistance to civil society organizations on how can they use AI for their daily tasks and activities, how can they benefit from all these tools and platforms. And then the third point is advocacy, so using UN human rights mechanisms, like making submissions to the Universal Periodic Review to provide recommendations for different governments on the use of artificial intelligence for governance. And the second activity is a conference that we organize yearly, once a year in August in Bangkok, every year on a different topic. This year it was on elections in Asia because, as I mentioned, there has been so many elections in the region in the last 2 years. And since artificial intelligence is becoming the next big topic, next year it will be on AI and governance in Asia, focusing on civil society, democracy, and media. So it's not going to be a conference, I mean, for techies. It's also important, but it's mostly for civil society organizations so they can understand how they can benefit from artificial intelligence. Now it comes the point where you have to work a little bit. We have about 40 minutes approximately. So before I let you work on a task and activity that I will explain you now, do we have any question? anything that you want to ask, some experience that you want to share, anything that wasn't clear enough, you can ask anything you want. If you don't have questions now, we can work on this activity and you can ask me at any point. Anything you need to ask before I explain the activity? All good? Okay. So the activity, as I mentioned at the beginning, is about drafting policy recommendations. For who? For different actors. One of the actors could be the government. So what should the government, if you want the government of Cambodia or in general governments, what should they do to make civil society more active in shaping the narratives of artificial intelligence? How can CSOs, civil society, use artificial intelligence more effectively and efficiently? Another set of recommendations can be for the international community, international INGOs, the United Nations. How can they assist in this process of digital transformation? What do you think that they should do? So a recommendation is always a should. The government of Cambodia, the government of Indonesia, the government of Thailand, doesn't matter, should 1, 2, 3, and 4 bullet points. The international community, like the UN, international INGOs, should, and then bullet points. Another actor to receive recommendations can be the civil society sector itself. It is not only about the others. How can others help civil society? Civil society also has some responsibilities. Another actor, important, technology companies. Technology companies, Google, Microsoft, Meta, should 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, one tip for policy recommendations. They need to be as specific as you can think of. The more generic policy recommendations are, the more difficult they are to be actionable. If you make a very vague, very generic policy recommendation, the government will nod their heads. They will say, yeah, okay, sure, next one, please, because it's difficult to implement. But if you make it very specific, they might listen to you or they might not listen to you. But at least they will know exactly what they have to do based on your suggestion.